Hey brother, have you ever wondered why you do the things that you do when you feel triggered by your wife's criticism? Have you ever wondered why you feel the need to defend and justify and explain and correct the record and tell her she shouldn't feel this way and she shouldn't be mad at you? Have you ever wondered why you do the things that you do? Well, in this video, I'm going to share with you some of the inner child work that I've done, and hopefully that will surface some insights for you so that you can feel comfortable in your own skin, not need to defend yourself, be able to hold space and listen to your wife when she's telling you how she feels, and basically be able to improve the intimacy and connection in your relationship. Welcome back to the Happy Man Coaching Channel. I'm your Happy Man coach, Charlie McKeever. Let's get started. Now, if you haven't seen the video where I talk about being abandoned on a porch when I was 4 years old by my mother, and how I fathered my inner child and learned to remove him from that scene so he doesn't have to live there anymore, I'll link that video in the description and you can watch that for all the details. But essentially that's what we're talking about here. Talking about being able to go back into a memory, go back into the past and father ourselves, be able to be there for ourselves, be able to remove that little boy from that scene so that he doesn't have to live there anymore. You see, we may think of ourselves as this static being, right? We look in the mirror in the morning when we brush our teeth and we say, there I am. But really, we're a collection of our experiences. We are reliving, to some degree, the things that we're afraid of. We are triggered by those things, and that causes us to behave in ways that we're not always happy with. So if we can go back and remove ourself, remove our past self from that scene, from that memory, then we can actually take ownership and control of ourselves so that we don't have to feel dependent and powerless and choiceless anymore, which we were when we were children. We were dependent on our parents, on a caregiver, on someone for food, shelter, water, love, safety, care. And we needed to stay connected to that source. And so there's a lot of things that we allowed, a lot of things that we coped with, a lot of things that we experienced that we've never really fully addressed. And it's not until we face those things and address those things that we'll be free of those things. You see, you may believe that you're a grown person walking around with credit cards and car keys and responsibilities and a job and pants, but at the end of the day, you're also that little child, that inner child, that little boy who had all those experiences, who may not have had someone there to advocate for him, to hold him, to let him know that he was okay, that everything was going to work out, that he was safe, and that he was loved, and that he was accepted. You may not have had that. You may have wanted it, but you learned to cope with the environment that you were in without those things. And so when we look outside of ourselves to our partner, to our wife, and say, hey, love me, appreciate me, make me feel safe, accept me, give me the love and everything that I feel like I'm lacking, that I need, then we're constantly going to be dependent. We're constantly going to feel powerless. We're constantly going to feel like we're not okay. And we're going to want to extract that from her. And she's going to try to give to us. She's going to try to be loving. She's going to try to be generous and all of those things. But because we're reliving the fear, the uncertainty of our childhood, there's going to be a part of us that doesn't believe it, that feels like it's not enough. We're going to circle back around, kind of like binge watching a movie over and over and over again. You know how the story goes. You have your favorite parts and your not so favorite parts, and you wind up reliving it, re-experiencing it kind of over and over again, and having a need for someone else to fulfill or fill up that cup for you. But when you face these things and address those for yourself and father your inner child, you take that little boy out of that situation. He doesn't have to live there anymore. He's not reliving all of that, and there's no need for you now to try to continually make up for that past moment, because now you can just be here, present, whole and complete. You and your inner child moving forward, caring for each other, and you can be the adult with the car keys, the credit cards, and all of the possibilities and joy that you have within you to experience in life. So to better help you understand what I'm talking about, let me tell you a little bit of a story. Recently, I had a bout of sadness, a bout of depression. And I got to tell you, anytime that I'm talking with a man and he says that he's sad or that he's depressed, It's because we have a sense of powerlessness. We have a sense that someone else is in control, that we're choiceless, that we can't, we're hopeless, that we can't make choices for ourselves, that we're stuck. Sometimes men will call it, talk about it as being trapped. They'll feel like they're stuck, they're trapped, they're dependent. They're talking about what she's doing or what she's not doing in reference to their wife. And that makes them feel powerless. It makes them feel sad. And so I was having an experience like this, and it kind of came on me pretty quickly. One day I was feeling great, and the next day I was feeling sad. And I was like, wow, what is this? Why is this? And it continued on for multiple days. It wasn't just a momentary thing. It wasn't something that I could kind of soothe myself through. It wasn't something that could just wait out. It just, for multiple days, I was feeling sad. And so I went to the lake, which is about an hour from here, took my RV and went out to the lake and thought, well, maybe a little bit of a difference, a little bit of a scenery change, a little bit of, some joy, outside joy would absorb some inside joy, right? It would unlock something for me. And that's generally what we do when we're trying to affect our insides, right? Is we change our scenery. We want something outside of us to change. And I know this doesn't work, but I had already done the inside stuff, and it wasn't producing a result. So I said, well, let me go and experience the natural beauty of the outside and see what that unlocks on the inside. And so, long story short, it didn't change anything. I was just sat at the lake, and I was like, wow, okay. And so what I did to overcome it eventually was that I just said, you know what, I'm just going to accept that I'm sad. I'm going to accept it and let that be okay. And to recognize that I'm okay even when I'm sad, that I'm not stuck this way, that it's not permanent, that I was okay. And then the sadness came upon me, and then I'll just wait for the clouds to pass, right? And so I, in that acceptance, in that letting go, the resistance, and pointing to what was, and just saying, okay, this is it. The next day I was journaling, and I actually had some insights. I was able to get out of that rut of thought, right? That despair, that sadness that robs us of our creativity and our ability to problem solve. And I was able to have some insights for myself. And I went, oh, okay, right. And I realized that I was in a place of choicelessness, that I was telling myself a story, and that was producing this sadness, which of course, I know, because when I talk with men, this happens all the time. And so I've been able to walk myself through these things, coach myself through these things because of the work that I've done. And again, though, sometimes the answers don't come in the moment that we want them. So we have to let go. We have to let be okay. We have to accept, and we have to let those answers come when it's time. And they did. So those answers came. Now, I want to fast forward to last night's Iron John call. We're actually reviewing the book Iron John as a group, and I want to tell you about some of the insights that came out of that call as a result of doing the work. So on the Iron John group call, we were doing a little bit of a check-in, and the organizer, Matt Epsky, asked me, hey, how was your time out at the lake? And so I said, well, it was interesting. I was a little sad. I went out to the lake, thought I could experience a little difference, a little contrast, a little change of environment, and that would produce a different result, and it didn't. And as I was telling the story and unfolding the information and going deeper than I am even here, I could hear myself kind of wanting to be seen, wanting to be understood, wanting to be rescued, wanting to be comforted, to be saved. And I know from all the reading and work that I've done is that nobody's coming to save you. We want someone to be there for us. We want someone to save us. But ultimately what happens is what we're experiencing is coming from the inside. And so an outside person can't save us from that. We have to save ourselves. We have to change our mindset. We have to understand our thoughts, and we have to be able to come up with a new view of things in order to be able to unlock it for ourselves and set ourselves free. So even as I was saying this, I was feeling that and recognizing that I wanted someone else to save me. And I was like, And so I decided that I needed to do some more work. Just out of that call, out of that group, out of that self-awareness, I recognized that something else is going on here, and I need to address that for myself. Now, conceptually, I want to talk just a moment about self, about my now self, and about my inner child self, right? That self then, because like I said before, we can separate those two and think, oh, I'm separate from that. My inner child is in the past, and that my now self, my adult self, is now. But we're really affected by our past experiences, especially when we haven't addressed them, we haven't faced them. Maybe we think that we've escaped them, but they're kind of just echoes, right? They're ghosts, they're kind of haunting us. We have memories of these things and we haven't processed through them and we don't know what to do with them. So we have to recognize that the experiences of our inner child are still affecting us today. And once we've turned toward those things and father our inner child, be there for our inner child, love our inner child, and free him from that past moment, then we unhook the boat anchor, right? We unhook the line from the dock, and we're actually able to take our ship, our boat, out into open waters and sail uncharted territory. But until we do that, we're just going to be stuck, anchored, tied to the dock, wondering why we're not going anyway, why we feel like we're experiencing the same things over and over again. This is why it's so important to understand what's going on the inside, because when your wife says something, it sounds like criticism. You take it as you're being attacked and you don't feel very good about it. You start to re-experience, start to relive some of those inner child moments when you were powerless, dependent, when you felt like you were choiceless, and you start to get sad, you start to get upset, you start to get frustrated, you start to push back and defend yourself and explain and justify and tell her why she shouldn't be mad at you, because you want to make it go away. You want to make that discomfort go away. And so it's really important to recognize that the inner child and you are the same, and that when you can bring those two back together, when you can heal those past wounds, that's when you can be free of those past moments and you can move forward in this moment. This is why it's important to be part of a community of men. Just like that group call where I was talking with the guys, I was able to hear myself. Other people were there to listen. It wasn't just me with my thoughts bouncing around in my head. I was able to actually say out loud to someone something that was going on for me, and I was able to hear myself. And those guys are able to ask questions, to offer insights, to provide feedback. And so that's why I started a community of men where we do this all the time, where we get together every week, where we have daily conversations with each other in a discussion feed, where we share feedback with each other and ask questions and share our experiences, because that's how we grow. We also grow through reading, through having books to read and videos to watch, and being able to to surface insights for ourselves. And one of the things that I've been reading recently, which you would think wouldn't be a self-help book, but it's the Tao of Willie. It's a kind of a memoir or a book about the philosophy of Willie Nelson, some of his life experiences, some of the things that he experienced as a kid, life lessons that he's learned, things that he's sharing. And he was sharing this when he was in his 70s, and he's well into his 90s or whatever now. So he was sharing this at a point in his life where he felt like he had, plenty of life experience behind him in order to be able to share something with others. In it, he says, once you replace negative thoughts with positive ones, you'll start having positive results. Now, this isn't new. He's not saying anything that hasn't been said before. There's a lot of echo of history where people have said we are what we think we are. We become what we think about. That our thoughts produce our reality. And what we a lot of times think is that means that somehow physically, tangibly out here that we'll be able to sit around in a bathrobe and manifest a unicorn, but that's not how that works. What we're talking about is when our inside changes, right? When our mind changes, then our outside changes. Even if our circumstances, even if what's happening around us doesn't change, what we think about that changes. That criticism, right? I'm going to use air quotes, criticism, that feeling of being attacked by your wife, it's all based on what you think is going on. If you believe that you're being attacked, if you believe that she's criticizing you, then you're going to feel the need to defend yourself. You're going to feel like you're not okay. But even beyond that, It may harken back to, there's a word, harken. It may harken back to a time when you didn't feel okay and you don't like that discomfort and you don't want to relive that and you haven't addressed that for yourself. You haven't comforted that inner child, worked with that little boy to bring him in to your care. And so you feel like you're being attacked by someone, you don't like it, it's uncomfortable, you want it to go away, and the next thing you know, you defend yourself. I've been reading that book. I've also this morning was reading a newsletter from Steve Horseman over at Good Guys to Great Men, and he was talking about this idea of mojo first, that when we are confident, when we feel good about ourselves, when we're in a place of owning ourselves, that's where the attraction comes from. That's where intimacy comes from. That's where we have the ability to open up and have connection with our wife comes from. And I got to tell you, that's absolutely true, because if we don't believe it internally, if we are not, if we don't have those thoughts, we don't have that operating instruction, if we don't have that frame of reference in our mind, then we're not going to be able to accept whatever's going on out here. Even if your wife is trying to love you, trying to care for you, trying to appreciate you, trying to respect you, it's just not going to go in. It's not going to make sense. It's going to be counter to what we think. I got my notes here. I'm reading off my notes. As a young man, I thought I had escaped my home life at 18. I thought I had escaped. I was starting out as me at 23. I felt like I knew who I was. I knew where I was going. I was confident. I could walk into a room. I was really trying hard to just be me. But I didn't understand, again, that the me, this now me, was also being affected by the past me, the previous me, the inner child me. And I wasn't aware of how that was coming across, until I did this work and had conversations with my wife where she said, you know what, I've been living with your mother for 28 years. Now, my mother was an alcoholic. She was emotionally unbalanced. There was a whole lot of chaos in our home that it was attributed to her and my stepfather's relationship and how they didn't get along. And so that inner child was trapped. When I look back at those memories, he was trapped in those scenes, in those moments. And he wanted desperately to be seen. He wanted to be saved. He wanted someone to come and be able to be with him, because he was alone, quite honestly. And I have some journal notes. I want to share those with you and kind of take you on a little bit of a journey so that you'll understand a little bit better what I'm talking about. Now, like I said before, you can have echoes of the past. So what am I talking about? Well, when I flip open my journal here, and hang in here, this is going to be worth every second of this video. So don't get impatient. Don't click away. When you start journaling, and this is what I recommend to every man that I work with, I recommend that he gets up, makes himself a cup of coffee if he's into that sort of thing, or a cup of tea, or whatever he an English muffin, whatever his thing is, piece of toast. Do that morning ritual every morning. Do it every morning, just to make it as a consistency in his life. And then read the entry from The Language of Letting Go, which is a great book, a 365-day meditations, where usually you're reading like one paragraph or one page. It takes about 30 seconds to a minute. And that's seed for thought. And then I go into journaling. I go into brain dumping, leaving on the page, whatever it is that I've got going on in my mind. And like I said, most recently, I've been thinking about this need to be saved. And who needs to be saved? Is that me now, the adult who needs to be saved, or is that the inner child who needs to be saved? Because a lot of times, if we start with us now, we have this context where we say, I don't know, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. But if we start letting the words just come, we can actually start to recognize that we're talking about the inner child. And this is what I did when I was journaling. I started to recognize that, what I'm talking about, this saving, this being seen, this not being alone, this being comforted, isn't me, it's the inner child. And I had very specific stories in my head about what that was. So let me just read to you my journal real quick, and then you can follow along and get a better idea what I'm talking about. Okay, so I wrote, I have a wound. I heard it last night on our Iron John call. So this is me just talking out loud, just free forming it, just brain dumping on the page. I want to be comforted, to be held, to be told it's okay, that I'm okay. I want to be seen. I want to be heard. I want to be understood, not alone. Saved, rescued, not trapped. Coping, terrified. Isolated, afraid, ashamed. Confined within the thin walls of a long trailer. Now, I was talking as in present tense, but as you start to realize that I'm actually talking about the past. I'm talking about a past me. I'm talking about where I grew up. I grew up in a 2-bedroom trailer, and I start to describe that trailer here in a minute, because as I allow myself to go back to that moment and be there and to describe what is going on for me, I'm no longer here right now, I'm there. And so I start to tap back into those things that I have tried to push away, tried to forget, and tried to avoid because they were uncomfortable. So here's the rest of it. We have a front dining area. Remember, this is just a trailer. It's a box, right? It's just a box with wheels on it that you can move around from place to place. Not everybody grew up in a trailer. Some people grew up in houses. Some people grew up in apartments. Some people were maybe homeless and moved from place to place. But for those who have lived in a trailer, if you've seen trailers, you kind of get what I'm talking about. We had a front dining area. And this is just a space big enough for a dining table. And that dining table sounds, even the word dining table sounds fancy, right? But this is just a place where we have a table, where there's tables and chairs and you can sit. There's an island kitchen, a living room, a hallway, a bedroom, a bathroom, a back door, a bedroom. All very small. The world was very small back then. It felt like my life was very small, which made things, being alone in that world, even worse, because then you felt like there was a whole world out there, but you were trapped in this can, right, in this trailer, and you were alone with everything that was going on. Remember, now I told you my mother was an alcoholic. There was a lot of chaos, a lot of yelling and screaming, and a lot of uncertainty growing up, and being trapped in that trailer was quite honestly terrifying. So the next bit, again, free-forming my journal here, mentally trying to escape the physical circumstances of my outer reality. Always uncertain, unsure, unsafe. Always waiting for drama to start, steeped in sadness. Floating in rules, disapproval and punishment. Floating in rules, disappointment and punishment. Can you imagine? Can you imagine how your wife feels when you're looking at her with confusion, with frustration, with disapproval, disappointment, with unlove, right? With non-acceptance. Why are you being this way? Why are you doing that? Why are you hurting me in this way, right? This is two hurt people hurting each other. But we're not talking about the now, right? We're talking about the inner child. Floating in rules, disapproval and punishment. Not good enough. I wasn't taught who to be. I was never taught who to be. There was never any sort of like, this is how you behave, and this is who you are, and this is what your values are, or what your character is, or what your boundaries are, or any of that stuff about being a person, right? I was taught who not to be, what not to do, what to get in trouble for, what to be punished about. I was taught to reject myself, to disown myself, to, quite frankly, not like myself. Our trailer was so simple. And this is where I just let this freeform, right? I'm telling you all of these things, but I just let this stuff freeform. I had no idea all of this was going to come out when I was journaling. I just let it go. Our trailer was so simple. And this explains a lot for me. I like simplicity. I like things. I've been getting rid of things as I've gotten older. I've been getting rid of things. I've been downsizing mentally, emotionally, physically, with things, and just kind of simplifying life, getting back to basics. And I found that it really feels good to get back to that place where I don't have to manage a whole bunch of things or strive to have a whole bunch of things in order to be someone, or to be okay, or to have all of the things that we think will make us happy. Our trailer was so simple. Furniture was minimal, kitchen table that we rarely ate at or sat at. We played dominoes on it a few times. There was tool chests in the corner. There was radio gear in the cabinets. We had a built-in kitchen with countertop and a microwave, countertop microwave fridge, cast iron skillets, paper towels, oil containers. We cooked with a lot of oil, fried a lot of things. A dish strainer, a can opener, a coffee maker, a toaster, I think. I didn't eat toast as a kid a lot, so I don't really remember if we had a toaster or not. I'm sure we did. A hand mixer for mashed potatoes and whipping up things. We used a built-in overhead lighting in all of the rooms. We didn't have any fancy lighting, fancy furniture. Things kind of matched, but they were also mismatched at the same time. In one corner of the living room, we had a lamp and a stereo system with big speakers, floor to, like almost as big as me speakers. A TV, coffee table, TV trays on my mother's end, ashtrays, cigarettes, lighter. My stepfather read Louis L'Amour. There were always Louis L'Amour books on the table with the lamp or on the coffee table. There was a big mirror on the wall on one of the main wing walls, and there was also a Miller Lite sign on the wall. My mother hung a Miller Lite sign on the wall. It's like living in a bar. There were knickknacks and cowboy and Indian head baubles on the wall. Maybe one picture, green shag carpet, some floral couches. We had mattresses and box springs and frames in the bedroom, built-in closets with drawers. The hallway was always kind of dark. The bathroom had a chest of drawers in there where we kept towels and things like that, and a small built-in storage area. It had a douche bag. It had a douche bag that hung on the shower. There was a plastic shower curtain, soap, shampoo, toilet paper, that sort of thing. We had toothpaste and toothbrushes and combs and a hair dryer and that dirty magazine that was shoved up under the chest of drawers that I hid there that I think nobody knew about. I'm not really sure. There was a weight scale and a wooden handle plunger with one of those red rubber plungers, that sort of thing, and a simple vanity. There was another bedroom with a mattress and a box spring and a frame and a grandma bedspread and a built-in secretary and some secondhand furniture that held up some things like drawing paper and pencils and a TV and a broken VCR that had been damaged in a fight that my parents had, but I had salvaged the VCR out of the trash. We had trinkets, and I actually had a computer when I was 10, and so I can see the keyboard and the controller and the mouse, and I had a couple of books and an old school Nintendo video game system, and a sliding closet with clothes and a mirror and a secretary and curtains on the windows, and I often slept till noon to escape my reality. I had a microscope and some other things, but I don't remember other specifics. There was a lot of country music in the house all the time. Floating music was a big thing in our house. There was a lot of smoke, a lot of beer, a lot of alcohol, a lot of fights, a lot of tension, a lot of yelling, a lot of 2 a.m. mornings, a lot of hitting, a lot of violence. There was a lot of physical contacts, a lot of bruising, a lot of just unpleasantries. Watching the clock, I would watch the clock when they would fight and just wait and keep track of the time to see what time that I would tell the police that the incident had occurred in case there was a police report that needed to be filled out with the exact details. Waiting for the end, not just the end of the fight, but maybe the end of a life. Escaping to school, pretending like everything was normal, that not letting anyone know, that I was hiding, concealing, pretending to be someone else, coping, surviving, repeating over and over and over again. That's the inner child. That's where the inner child lived. My inner child has been stuck there, reliving, surviving, wanting someone to see him, to save him, to set him free. Today is the day right? Today's the day. That's when we decide. That's when we declare. When we become aware, this is when we declare. This is when we decide. This is when change happens. When something happens inside here, then something happens outside there. Today is the day. I am that man, that someone. My mother was always too much. She was angry. She was sad. She was upset. She was unhappy. She was always stirring poop. She was a hard worker, but she was also very inappropriate, unfiltered. She was crass and confrontational. My stepfather was quiet, calm, patient, reserved. He was a worker, but he only did kind of what he needed to do. He didn't really have outside hobbies or other interests. He just kind of read those Louis L'Amour books and kind of put up with her stuff. I never really understood why. She was chaos, he was calm. Doesn't mean he was perfect, doesn't mean he was great, doesn't mean she was terrible. Just means that's the inner child's experience of those people. That's even a memory, right? It doesn't even mean that all of the moments are cumulative, like that we didn't have great moments, that we didn't have other memories. It's just that these are the things that for the inner child that stand out. Both were stubborn as fuck. Part of that outlaw culture, that counterculture. I didn't really know them or their stories, just a few glimpses. Nothing intimate or deep, just pieced together over time indirectly, living with familiar strangers, experiencing their demons more than their angels. And so that was what I wrote in my journal. I was like, hey, this was an outpouring. Like I said, it was very free form. I didn't have any plan. I wasn't really trying to even make these insights come to the surface. But as I allowed myself to dump on the page the things that were going on, I just followed the trail to see where it went. Now, the next part is what I want to tell you about fathering that inner child so that he doesn't have to live there anymore. Now, like I said in the beginning, when I had the realization that my 4-year-old porch story was an experience that I had relived, it would come to mind periodically like a song that would just pop into your head for no reason, and I didn't know what to do with it until I had read an article that talked about being able to walk back into that scene and remove your inner child from that scene, just like you were editing a movie. You weren't trying to deny that those things happened, but you could edit the story, you could add on to it, and you could walk into that scene and remove that inner child from that story so that he doesn't have to live there anymore, so that he's not stuck there, so that the end of the movie doesn't just loop from the point of being abandoned to the beginning of that moment. It can actually have a place where he leaves that scene and experiences something new, where he travels with you, where he is able to be safe and cared for and comforted and reminded that he's okay. And so this is the same thing that needs to happen with all of that I just shared with you. All of those places, I told you about all of those places, all of those rooms in the house and what they looked like and what was in them and how all of that felt, because in that moment, in that story, there's multiple rooms, there's multiple moments where that inner child needs to be freed, needs to be removed from that scene, needs to be removed from that room. There's moments when I was standing in that kitchen, moments when I was in those bedrooms, moments when I would stand at the door on the outside of our trailer and not know what was going to be on the other side of it when I opened that door. Is my mother going to be drunk? Is it going to be a 2 a.m. morning? I don't know. But I know that I would go to school, I would pretend like everything was okay, and then I would have to return to that reality. And so anytime throughout my adult life I've ever had any sort of chaos or any sort of thing that felt like a reaching back to that childhood, it was triggering, it was upsetting, and it was something that I always wanted it to go away. But that was because I had never gone back to revisit those moments. I was always trying to avoid them. So there are those many rooms that this work will need to be done in, and he doesn't have to live there anymore, that I can actually remove him from those scenes. And that means he's no longer alone. He's no longer trapped. He's no longer stuck, which means I'm no longer trapped. I'm no longer stuck, right? I'm no longer tied down to the echoes of the past, no longer tied down to those previous memories. I see him, I understand him, I love him, and he is me, right? And then when we do that for ourselves, what happens is Now other people in our life don't have to do that for us. We are not spending all our time and energy and focus on the external, trying to get them to give to us what we think we don't have, what we think that we need, because what we think that we lack, because we already have it. We have the ability to give it to ourselves, to provide it for ourselves. And being in a community of men, being in connection with other men, journaling, having these group discussions, reading books, and watching videos is what helps us to surface these things, and then turning toward those things and facing them and sitting with them and understanding them, and then being able to process them and move past them. This is what is important. So as we move along here, I just want to invite you into a conversation like that. I want to invite you into this community of men. I want to be able to help you to surface. I want to be able to help you hear yourself, like I was talking about being able to hear myself. And I want you to know that when you do, no longer do you need to explain or defend or justify. You're able to hold space for your wife. You're able to hear that something's going on for her, that she's upset, that she's triggered, that she's hurt, that she's got something going on. And it doesn't mean that your feelings aren't important. It just means that how you feel about things start to change when your mind starts to change, when your inner world starts to change, your outer world starts to change. And the crazy thing is that when that happens, she starts to show up differently, because now she gets a different version of you. You give her a different version of you. Instead of giving her a hurt version of you, a version of you that is confused or frustrated or resentful or uncomfortable in your own skin, she gets a version of you that is patient and has empathy and is loving and is able to give her the gift of you, that you, the healed version of you, the happy version of you, the version of you that you are, that you want to be. Not the version of you that's hanging on to the hurt and pain of a past inner boy, an inner child who hasn't healed. So I want to invite you into that. Go to happymancoaching.com/contact, fill out that form. Let's talk. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me about your situation. Tell me what happens when you feel like your wife is attacking you, when you feel triggered, when you feel like you need to defend or explain or justify. Let's talk about what goes on for you. Let's surface some of these insights for yourself so that you can heal those parts of you, and so that you can bring that inner child home, so that the two of you can move forward together and experience a beautiful life. Let's talk. happymancoaching.com/contact, fill out the form. We'll set up a call. We'll spend some time with each other, getting to know each other, and we'll come up with a plan. We'll come up with a plan for you to be able to experience something new. All right, brother. I'll talk to you soon.